Say your last prayer, Mum.
What on earth is going on here?
What on earth is going
Bianca's
on here?
voice detonates in the doorway. Her eyes find her mother. Then they find him. Then they find the duvet and the space between them, and her face does something that has no name. Mum. Her voice drops to barely a whisper. What have you done? Bianca, please. Vivian is already out of the bed, reaching for her daughter. Just let me. Do not touch me. She grabs the door. Bianca. The slam shakes the walls. Vivian stands in the silence, her hands trembling, her breath in pieces. Tae-won moves toward her. Don't. The tears come before she can stop them. She wraps her arms around herself and looks up at him through everything she is feeling. I knew loving you would cost me everything.
Don't.
Her voice breaks wide
I knew
open.
loving you would cost me
did it
everything.
anyway.
But I did it anyway.
The door swings open again. Bianca is back, but this time her hands are not empty. The gun is pointed directly at her mother. Her eyes are dry, completely dry. Say your last prayer, Mum.
Say your last
Vivian's
prayer,
breath
Mum.
catches Bianca. The trigger clicks. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The night Vivian Zulu walked into the Grand Meridian Ballroom, she was 17 minutes late, and the room felt it before she cleared the entrance. She'd almost cancelled. The invitation had sat on her kitchen counter for 3 weeks, and every time she walked past it, she found a reason to ignore it. Too tired, too busy, too many rooms full of people performing wealth at each other when she could be home with a book and silence that actually meant something. But something had stopped her. Not a reason, just a feeling. The quiet, certain kind she had learned over 60 years of living to never argue with. So she had put on the black dress, the one that moved like it had opinions. She had pulled her locks up and left two loose at the sides, and then caught herself doing it the way she always used to when he was alive, and stood very still for 4 seconds before picking up her bag and walking out before the feeling could follow her. She was not thinking about her husband tonight. She was not thinking about anything. The Grand Meridian was everything Houston money believed itself to be. High ceilings, low lighting, the specific hum of a room full of people who had stopped needing to prove anything because the room proved it for them. Vivian walked in and conversations paused, the way they always did when she entered spaces. Not because she tried, because she had never learned how to enter a room quietly, and at 60 she had stopped trying to learn. She reached for a champagne glass from a passing tray, and felt it, across the ballroom, stillness, not the polite, distracted stillness of a man whose attention had wandered. The absolute stillness of someone whose entire system had just been interrupted by something it was not prepared for. She looked up. A man she'd never seen before in her life was looking at her from across the room like he had been waiting for her to arrive. Their eyes met. 1 second. 2. Vivian looked away, herself first. Took a slow, deliberate sip of champagne and told herself the feeling spreading through her chest was nothing. She was wrong. Mum! Bianca appeared at her elbow, warm and electric, and smelling of the perfume Vivian had given her for her last birthday. You actually came. I'd already prepared my disappointed face. Vivian kissed her daughter's cheek. You look stunning. And she did. Bianca Zulu at 32 was the kind of beautiful that stopped conversations. Her mother's bone structure, her father's eyes, a laugh that filled rooms without asking permission. Tonight she was dressed in deep cobalt blue that made her skin luminous, and her energy was wound tight in the specific way of a woman who had been waiting for something for a very long time and had finally decided that tonight was the night it happened. Vivian recognized that energy. She had worn it herself once. A long time ago. He is here. Bianca's voice dropped. Her eyes had already found their destination across the room. 2 years, Mum. 2 years of being exceptional at my job and completely invisible to this man. Tonight that changes. Vivian followed her daughter's gaze. The man she had looked away from was already looking back. That feeling again. Cold and warm at the same time. Settling somewhere beneath her sternum without permission. Which one? She asked it even though she already knew. Lim Tae-won. Bianca straightened. 35. Korean. Built his entire corporation in this city from nothing. Brilliant and infuriating in equal measure. A breath. And the most beautiful man I've ever stood in the same room with. Please do not tell me you cannot see it. Vivian saw it. Tae-won was tall and lean in the way of a man who moved through the world with complete physical awareness of everything around him. His dark suit was immaculate, and he wore it the way men who are genuinely dangerous wear expensive things. Like it was beside the point. His jaw was sharp. His eyes across the distance were sharper, and where his cuffs ended, intricate tattoos disappeared beneath his cufflinks like the beginning of a story he had not finished telling. He was mid-conversation with 4 of Houston's most powerful men. Then he was not. He excused himself without explanation. No apology. No ceremony. And he was moving through the crowd with the specific directness of a man who had decided where he was going and saw no reason to pretend otherwise. Toward them. Bianca saw him coming and everything in her lifted. 2 years compressed into the single moment. She raised her hand. Just slightly. Just enough. He walked straight past her. The hand came down slowly. Bianca turned around. Lim Tae-won was standing in front of her mother with an expression on his face that made Bianca's next breath arrive slightly wrong. Like a man who had just found something he had spent years looking for. Looking at her mother like the ballroom, the city, the entire night had narrowed down to one point, and that point was Vivian Zulu. Vivian Zulu. He said her name like he already knew the shape of it. Vivian took his hand. Steady. That is me. Lim Tae-won. 1 beat longer than a handshake needed. Your company's data security infrastructure is some of the most sophisticated work I have seen in this city. You did your research on everything that matters to me, simply, without apology. The air between them shifted into something that had not been there a moment ago. Bianca stepped forward, smooth, perfectly timed. I see you have met my mother. 2 years of professionalism in every syllable. Tae-won turned to Bianca. Warm, genuine, the expression of a man who respected the person in front of him. And with absolute, unmistakable clarity. The expression of a man whose attention had already moved somewhere else entirely and was not coming back. I did not know she was your mother. Now you do. Bianca smiled. The smile cost her something nobody could see. He looked back at Vivian. I wonder if I could have a few minutes. There is something I should have said a long time ago, and I think I've run out of reasons to keep waiting. Vivian looked at her daughter. Bianca's smile did not move. Not one muscle. Go ahead, Mum. I will find us a table. Vivian looked at Tae-won. At the steadiness behind his eyes, at whatever lived underneath that steadiness that she could not name and could not walk away from. She went. The balcony was quieter than the ballroom, but not quieter than the space between them. Houston spread below in every direction, lights running like veins through the city, the night air warm and unhurried. They stood at the railing, and the silence that settled between them was the fullest silence Vivian had stood inside in years. Not empty, not awkward. The kind of silence that exists between two people when something true is about to be said and both of them can feel it coming. He broke it first. I owe you something I've never been able to repay. I think you have the wrong person. I have never had the wrong person. Quiet. Absolute. Not once in 10 years. She held his gaze. Then say what you came to say. He turned to face her fully, like a man who had rehearsed this moment so many times that the rehearsal had become useless, and now there was nothing left but the truth delivered without armor. 10 years ago there was a hospital, a corridor, late at night. Each word placed carefully. You were sitting alone, crying the way people cry when something has ended that they cannot bring back, and I was... A pause. His jaw tightened briefly. I was in the worst place I'd ever been in my life. And you looked up and you saw me. Not through me, not past me. You actually saw me. And you reached across and held my hand and told me everything was going to be all right. Vivian had stopped breathing. You called me your son. The last word landed quietly and devastatingly. And then the nurses came and everything moved, and I never... He exhaled slowly. I never got to tell you what those 4 words did for a man who had forgotten what it felt like to matter to anyone. The champagne glass slipped from Vivian's hand. He caught it before it fell. His fingers closed over hers around the stem, and neither of them moved. The contact landed somewhere deep and immediate. The city hummed below them like it was keeping time for something neither of them had words for yet. Vivian looked down at their hands, then slowly up at his face. The hospital corridor came back to her in a wave she was not braced for. The smell of disinfectant, the cold corridor light, her husband's name written on a whiteboard behind a nurse's station in handwriting that was too casual for what it meant. A young Korean man sitting completely alone across the corridor with the stillness of someone who had run out of anything left to ask for. Her hand moving before her mind caught up with it. She had forgotten. In the avalanche of grief that swallowed everything after that night, she had forgotten almost everything except the loss. He had not forgotten a single second. That was you. Barely a breath. That was me. I had no idea. Her eyes filled and she let them. I was barely present that night. My husband was... The sentence had nowhere to go that did not break something. She stopped. I know. His voice was gentle in a way that sat completely at odds with the sharpness of everything else about him. I found out afterward what you lost that night. I'm deeply sorry, Vivian. The way he said her name, like he had been saying it privately for a very long time. She was going to need to think about that. Tae-won. Footsteps. They turned together. Bianca stood in the balcony doorway, 2 champagne glasses in her hands. Her eyes moved across the scene in front of her in less than 3 seconds. Her mother's filled eyes, his hand still covering hers, the specific texture of the silence she had just walked into, and ran a calculation behind them that came back with an answer she had not been prepared for. Her face did not crumble. It closed. Quietly. Completely. The way you close a door when you do not want the sound to carry. She set the 2 glasses down on the railing, each movement precise, deliberate. The the movements of a woman using control because it is the only thing left available to her. I forgot I have an early start. Flawless. Every syllable immaculate. Mum, I will call you tomorrow. Bianca, good night, Tae-won. She did not look at him. She walked away. Bianca. She did not stop. Did not slow. The crowd swallowed her whole, and she was gone as completely as if she had never been there. Vivian stared at the empty doorway. Her daughters closed, face sitting behind her eyes like something she could not blink away, his hand still warm over hers. Tae-won's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. 1 second. Everything changed, not gradually, all at once. Like a city losing power, every light gone simultaneously. The warmth drained from his face completely, and something older and harder took its place. The man behind the man, the one that lived underneath everything she had just seen and felt and almost understood. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Vivian. Controlled, completely, like a door closing on a room she had almost been allowed to enter. It was a privilege. He was back inside before she found a single word. 60 seconds later, he was gone from the gala entirely. Vivian stood alone on the balcony, Houston below her, her champagne glass in her hand, one side of her fingers still warm where his had been, her daughter's face on the other side of her mind, like a wound she did not know yet how to dress. She did not know how long she stood there. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. Something in her did anyway. Hello. The voice was calm, unhurried, the specific calm of someone who had decided that calm was the most frightening thing they could be. Tell him to stop. 4 words. Silence. Nothing. Vivian lowered the phone slowly. The city below kept moving the way cities do, enormous and indifferent and completely unaware that something had just shifted permanently in the air above it. She stared at the screen. Unknown number. No trace. No name. Tell him to stop. Stop what? Stop who? And how did a voice she had never heard know that she had just met a man she was already, against every instinct she had spent 60 years building, struggling to forget? Vivian did not sleep. She lay in the dark with 4 words sitting on her chest like something with weight. Tell him to stop. She turned onto her side, turned back, stared at the ceiling. The unknown number was still on her phone when she checked it at midnight. At 2, at 4, each time the same result. Untraceable, unreachable. A voice that had come from nowhere and returned to it, leaving nothing behind except 4 words and the cold certainty of someone who knows they have been watched without knowing for how long. Stop what? Stop who? She got up at 5:30 and made coffee. She did not drink and stood at her kitchen window watching Houston wake up and tried to organize her thoughts into something manageable. By 6:30 she had managed nothing. She walked to Bianca's door, stood outside it, raised her hand to knock, and stood there. What was she going to say? That she was sorry for something she had not done deliberately. That the man her daughter had spent 2 years wanting had looked at her in a way she could not explain and could not stop thinking about. That she had felt something on that balcony that she had not felt in 10 years, and it frightened her in ways she did not have language for yet. She lowered her hand, walked away. The silence behind that closed door followed her all the way to her car. She sat at her desk at 7:45 and opened her emails, and stared at them without reading a single word. His face kept finding her in the quiet, the way he had said her name, like he already knew the weight of it, the way the warmth had drained from his face when he looked at his phone. All at once, like a city losing power. And the man she had been standing with had been replaced by someone she did not recognize. Her assistant knocked at 9:15. "Package for you, no sender, delivered by hand, security sign for it." Vivian looked up. By hand. That is what they said. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single photograph, her and Tae-won on the balcony, shot from a distance but sharp enough that every detail was visible, his hand covering hers over the champagne glass. Her face turned up toward his. The specific quality of the space between them that no amount of explaining away could make look like anything other than what it was. Someone had been standing on that balcony last night. Someone had been watching long before the unknown caller made their first move. Her office door opened. Tae-won walked in. He saw the photograph in her hands before he saw anything else. He closed the door behind him, crossed to her desk and reached for it. His fingers brushed hers as he took it. Neither of them pretended not to notice. He studied it, set it down, pulled the chair across from her desk and sat like a man who had decided that what he was about to say required him to be closer to the ground. "I need to tell you something." He looked at her directly. "Not about last night, before last night. If you're still watching up till now, type 'I'm still here' in the comment section. Then say it." She answered, "When I woke up from surgery 10 years ago, the first thing I asked was about the woman in the corridor. They told me they did not know who I meant." A pause. "I spent the next 3 years finding you." Vivian's breath shifted. "I found your name, your company, everything about the life you had built, and I watched from a distance because what I saw was a woman who had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and built something extraordinary from it. I told myself she did not need a stranger walking in and disrupting that." His voice dropped. "So I stayed away." "For how long?" 7 years. The number landed differently than she expected. Not 3, not 5. 7. 7 years of a man she had never met, knowing her name, knowing her company, knowing the shape of her life from a distance she had never felt. And then 6 months ago your company filed for the Meridian City contract. Something moved behind his eyes. The same contract my corporation was competing for. I pulled your file the way I pull every competitor's file. And I saw your photograph and He stopped. The stop was not evasion. It was a man reaching for accuracy. I knew I was done staying away. Vivian looked at him for a long time. "You arranged to be at that gala last night." Not a question. He did not deny it. "Yes." She stood, turned to a window. Houston spread below in the morning light. She pressed her fingers to the glass and felt the cold of it against her palm. "My husband died that night." Steady. She had learned to make it steady. 10 years, and I have never fully come back from that. I kept moving because stopping felt like it might finish what the grief started. But I have never fully come back. She heard him stand, heard him cross the room. He stopped just behind her, close enough that she felt his presence without contact, not touching, just there. "I am not asking you to come back from it. Lo, just for this room. I am not asking you to be anywhere you are not ready to be. I'm just asking you not to run from me before you understand what this is." She turned, around, close enough that the world held its breath between them. Her phone rang. The sound cut through everything. She looked at the screen. Unknown number, same number. She answered it without looking away from him. Yes. Ask him about Kang-soo. The same calm voice, the calm that was not calm at all. Ask him what he buried in Houston 3 years ago. Dead. Vivian lowered the phone, looked at Tae-won. Who is Kang-soo? 3 words, and she watched something happen to his face that told her the name was not just a name. It was a door. Behind that door was something that had not finished moving. Every trace of warmth left him. All of it. Gone. He reached for his jacket. Stay inside tonight. Do not open your door for anyone. Tae-won. Anyone. Do you understand me? He picked up the photograph from her desk, and then he stopped. He turned back to her slowly, like a man who had just made a decision he could not unmake. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed something on her desk beside the photograph. A key card. Plain. Black. No markings. If anything happens tonight that frightens you. His eyes held hers. Anything at all. That address is registered to the card. You come there. You do not call me first. You just come. Vivian looked at the key card, then at him. How long have you had that prepared? He said nothing, which was the most frightening answer he could have given her. He walked out before she could say another word. Vivian stood in the silence he left behind and looked at the key card on her desk. Plain. Black, no markings. Prepared in advance. Which meant he had been expecting something to happen before last night even began. Which meant the photograph delivered to her office this morning was not a surprise to him. Which meant whoever was watching had been watching long before the gala. Which meant she had walked into something last night without knowing the ground beneath it. She picked up the key card, turned it over in her hand. Kang-soo. She said the name quietly in the empty office, just to hear what it felt like. It felt like a door she was not sure she was ready to open. But she put the key card in her pocket, and she did not put it back. 6 hours later, Bianca's key turned in the front door. Her daughter came into the living room and sat across from her, and Vivian looked at her face and felt her chest pulled tight. Bianca's eyes were red in the careful way of someone who had cried earlier and was determined not to cry again. Her voice when she spoke was built deliberately, brick by brick. Mum? She looked at her mother without flinching. I need you to answer me honestly. Vivian said nothing. Do you have feelings for Tae-won? Vivian opened her mouth. Bianca held up one hand. Small. Certain. And please, not a tremor, not one. Please do not lie to me. The silence between mother and daughter was the heaviest silence that room had ever held. And sitting in her pocket against her hip, the key card. Tae-won had left on her desk pressed against her like a secret that had already decided whose side it was on. Vivian looked at her daughter's face across the living room and made the worst decision of her life. No. Steady. Even. The way she said everything when she needed it to hold. I do not have feelings for Tae-won. He is your boss. I met him once. Bianca looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Once. Slowly. The nod of a woman who has just received an answer she already knew was not the truth, and has decided that pressing further tonight would cost her something she cannot afford to lose. She stood up. Good night, Mum. The door closed softly behind her. That soft click was somehow worse than any slam could have been. Vivian sat alone in the silence her daughter had left behind, and felt the lie sitting in her chest like something she could not swallow and could not spit out. 32 years. Not once. Not about anything that mattered. Until tonight. She picked up her phone, looked at the unknown number still sitting in her call history, set the phone back down, looked at the key card on the table beside it. Then she turned off the light and went to bed, and lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and did not sleep. Tae-won went dark. No calls, no messages, no unannounced appearances in her office doorway. Nothing. The man who had walked into her life with the certainty of someone who had been planning the entrance for years simply vanished as completely as if he had never been there. Vivian told herself she was relieved. She threw herself into work the way she always did when she needed to stop thinking. Back-to-back meetings, a product launch that required her full attention, 2 client presentations that she delivered with the precision and authority that had built her reputation in this city. She was excellent at her job, and she used that excellence like a wall. Behind the wall, her hands told a different story. She checked her phone more than she had checked it in years. She caught herself looking at the office door. She found herself in conversations where someone was speaking to her, and she was nodding in all the right places, while somewhere underneath the nods, a voice she had only heard twice was saying things she could not unhear. "I'm just asking you not to run from me before you understand what this is." Day 2, she found the key card in her jacket pocket. She stood in her office, holding it for 4 minutes before putting it back. Day 3, 1 message. No greeting, no context. "Are you still safe?" Vivian stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "Yes. Are you?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. She put the phone face down on her desk and pressed both palms flat against the surface and breathed. Across the city in Tae-won's office building, Bianca was doing what she always did when something was wrong. She was working harder than was necessary and pretending she was fine with a precision that would have convinced anyone who did not know her well. Vivian knew her well. When Bianca called that evening, her voice was bright in the specific way of someone who had decided brightness was a strategy. She talked about a client presentation, about lunch with a colleague, about everything except the thing that was actually happening. Then she mentioned it, casually, lightly, the way you mention something that has been sitting in the center of your chest for 3 days. Tae-won has not been in the office. A pause so brief it was almost not a pause. His assistant says he is handling a private matter. Nobody knows anything else. Vivian said nothing. It is probably nothing. Another pause. He does this sometimes, apparently. Goes off-grid. I am sure he is fine. Vivian said it carefully. I am sure. Bianca agreed. Too quickly. Too lightly. They talked for another 4 minutes about nothing and then said good night. And when the call ended, Vivian sat with the phone in her hand and thought about her daughter's voice and the specific quality of the things Bianca had not said. The next morning, the Korean woman arrived at 9. She did not knock. She opened Vivian's office door and walked in and sat down in the chair across the desk, with the ease of someone who had decided that permission was a formality she did not require. She was somewhere in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed, the kind of cold beauty that suggested she had once been something warmer and had chosen differently. She placed a file on the desk between them, thick, unmarked, the kind of file that had been assembled deliberately over time. You do not know me. Her English was precise, measured. My name is not important. What is in that file is... Vivian looked at the file, then at the woman. Who sent you? Nobody sent me. Her eyes did not move. I came because I have made this mistake before. Watching a woman get close to Lim Tae-won and saying nothing and then watching what happened to her, I decided I would not make that mistake again. What happened to her? She disappeared. Simply, finally, like a door closing. Kang-soo was Tae-won's partner. 3 years ago, Kang-soo vanished. People in Tae-won's world do not simply vanish, Vivian. They are made to vanish. And the woman who was close to Tae-won when it happened, she disappeared shortly after. She stood, smoothed her jacket. Open the file. Do not open it. That is your choice. But do not tell yourself later that nobody warned you. She walked out. The door closed behind her. Vivian sat in the silence of her office and looked at the file on her desk. She did not open it. She did not throw it away. She sat with it between her hands like something she had not yet decided the weight of and thought about a woman who had disappeared, about a partner who had vanished, about a man who had prepared a keycard in advance because he had known something was coming before the night even began. She thought about all of it for a very long time, and then she picked up the file and put it in her bag and went home. He was at her front door at 7:30. She had not called him, had not messaged him, had not given him any indication that she would be home tonight or that she needed him there. But he was at her door at 7:30 with 3 days of something she could not fully name, written into every line of his face. He looked like a man who had been at war in a place she could not see, and had come out the other side of it still standing but not entirely undamaged. She opened the door and looked at him. He looked back. She stepped aside and let him in without asking why. They sat across from each other in her living room, and the file was on the coffee table between them before she had consciously decided to put it there. He saw it immediately. His eyes moved from the file to her face, and she watched him register everything. How she had gotten it. What it meant that she had not opened it. What it meant that she had not thrown it away. "How much do you know?" His voice was quiet. "Enough to be terrified." She held his gaze. "Not enough to walk away?" Something broke open behind his eyes. Not dramatically, quietly, the way things break open in people who have spent years keeping themselves sealed. Like a seam giving way under pressure, it was never designed to hold indefinitely. He reached across the table. His hand covered hers. First time. Deliberate. Intentional. Not accidental contact reaching for a champagne glass, not fingers brushing over a photograph. A conscious choice made by a man who had been making the opposite choice for 10 years, and had finally run out of reasons to keep making it. She did not pull away. "I spent 10 years keeping my world away from you." His thumb moved slightly against the back of her hand. Just slightly. Just enough. "Every decision I made for 10 years had one condition underneath it. That you stayed safe. That whatever I was doing stayed far enough, away from your life that you never felt it." His jaw tightened. "Kang-soo found out about you 3 weeks ago. I do not know how. I do not know who told him, but he knows your name and he knows what you mean to me, and now the only way to keep you safe is to keep you close." Vivian looked at their hands, then at his face. "Is that the only reason you want me close?" He looked at her, the way he looked at her, like the question deserved more than any words he currently possessed. Like the answer had been living in him for 10 years, and had simply grown too large for a language. He did not answer. He did not need to. Outside her window, Houston moved through its evening without concern for any of this. Inside the house, the silence between them was the most honest thing either of them had sat inside in years. He stayed. not out of desire, out of protection. He took the side of the bed closest to the door and lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, jacket off, shoes off, but otherwise, exactly as he had arrived. She lay beside him under the duvet, and they did not touch, and they did not speak, and the space between them was simultaneously the smallest and the largest space either of them had ever occupied. She could hear him breathing. She wondered if he could hear her. She thought about her husband, about the way grief does not disappear, but sometimes shifts slightly to one side to make room for something it has not decided the name of yet. She thought about Bianca, about the lie she had told, about the keycard still in her jacket pocket in the wardrobe 3 feet away. She did not know when she fell asleep. She only knew that when she did the first real sleep she had managed in 3 days, arrived quickly and completely, and without apology. Before dawn, the front door opened. The sound arrived in Vivian's consciousness, the way sounds do when you are sleeping lightly. Present and wrong simultaneously. She was already sitting up when she heard the footsteps on the stairs. Beside her, Tae-won was already awake, already still in the specific way of a man whose body had never fully stopped being alert. They looked at each other in the dark. The footsteps reached the landing. Bianca had not been expected home until morning. She had told her mother she was staying at a colleague's apartment. She had a key. She always had a key. The bedroom door opened. Bianca stood in the doorway. Her eyes found her mother first, then they found him, then they found the duvet and the space between them and the 2 pairs of shoes side by side on the floor, and her face did something that had no name, something that existed in the specific geography between devastation and disbelief, between the thing you feared and the thing you never actually believed would be real. Mum. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. The whisper of a woman whose lungs had just forgotten how to work at full capacity. What have you done? Bianca, please. Vivian was already out of the bed, already moving toward her daughter with her hands out and her heart in her throat. Just let me. Do not touch me. She grabbed the door. Bianca! The slam shook the walls, shook the floor, shook something in Vivian's chest that had no structural name but felt load-bearing. The silence after it was the loudest silence Vivian had ever stood inside. Her hands were trembling. Her breath was arriving in pieces too small to be useful. She stood in the middle of her bedroom in the wreckage of the moment and felt everything she had been holding together for 3 days come apart simultaneously. Tae-won was off the bed, moving toward her. Don't. The word came out broken. The tears arrived before she could make a single decision about them, hot and immediate and completely beyond negotiation. She wrapped her arms around herself the way you do when you need to hold something in that is determined to come out. She looked up at him through everything she was feeling and everything she had done and everything it had cost and was still going to cost. I knew loving you would cost me everything. Her voice broke wide open on the last word, cracked clean through. I did it anyway. Tae-won went completely still. The words landed on him the way words do when they're true and enormous and arrive without warning. His jaw tightened, his eyes burned with something he had no name for and was not going to pretend he did. The door swung open. Bianca was back, but this time her hands were not empty. The gun was pointed directly at her mother. Both hands. Steady. Her eyes were dry, completely dry. The tears were gone, and what had replaced them was something quieter and more terrifying than tears. The specific stillness of a woman who has moved through heartbreak and come out somewhere she did not plan to be. Tae-won moved instinctively forward. Do not. Bianca's eyes did not leave her mother. Do not move. He stopped. Vivian looked at her daughter, at the gun, at the hands holding it that she had held when they were small, that she had bandaged when they bled, that she had watched grow from a child's hands into a woman's hands over 32 years of loving someone more than she had ever loved anything except the man whose absence had defined the last decade of her life. Bianca. Her voice came out barely sound. Say your last prayer, Mum. Bianca. The trigger clicked. The bullet hit the wall. Not her mother. The wall. 3 inches to the left of Vivian's head. Close enough that the plaster cracked, and the silence that followed was the most complete silence any of them had ever stood inside. Bianca stared at what her hands had just done. The gun fell from her hands the way things leave you when the part of you that was holding on stops being able to hold on. She looked at it on the floor, then at her mother standing against the wall breathing, and her legs simply stopped working. She slid down the wall. The sound that came out of her was the most broken sound either of them had ever heard. Something underneath crying. Something that had been building for longer than this moment and had finally found the only exit available to it. Vivian was on her knees beside her daughter before she made the decision to move. Her arms went around Bianca, and Bianca did not push her away. She turned into her mother the way she had not turned into her since she was a child, and cried from somewhere so deep that Vivian could feel it in her own bones. Tae-won picked up the gun quietly, looked at Vivian once, just long enough to make sure she was breathing, and stepped out of the room. He understood. This was not his room to be in right now. Vivian held her daughter on the bedroom floor and said nothing. There were no words for this, so she held her and rocked her slightly the way she had at 3 years old, and at 7 and at 15 when her father died. And she let Bianca cry until the crying ran out of itself. When it finally stopped. The room was grey with early morning light. Bianca pulled back, eyes swollen almost shut. Voice flat. I could have killed you. You did not. I could have. Bianca. Vivian held her daughter's face in both hands. You did not. Bianca closed her eyes. I needed something to stop. I needed everything to stop. I know. Vivian pressed her forehead against her daughter's. I know. They stayed like that until the light changed completely. When Vivian came downstairs, Tae-won was gone. On the kitchen counter, 3 words on the back of a receipt in handwriting she was beginning to recognize. You are safe. She folded it and put it in her pocket beside the key card, and made coffee she did not drink. Bianca came downstairs at 9 and sat across from her mother and wrapped both hands around her mug. Her eyes were swollen but clear. The clarity of someone who has cried themselves to the other side of something. Who is he really, Mum? Flat. Emptied out. Not the man you feel something for. Who is he really? Vivian looked at her daughter and told her everything. The hospital, the night her father died, the young Korean man sitting alone in the corridor, her hand reaching across without thinking, the words she had said and forgotten, and he had carried for 10 years. The gala, the balcony, the key card, all of it. Bianca listened without moving. When Vivian finished, the kitchen was completely silent. Bianca looked down at her mug, then up. Dad's heart is inside him. Yes. The word landed between them like something set down after being carried a very long way. Bianca walked to the kitchen window, stood with her back to her mother. Long silence. Does he know? Not yet. She turned around. Her eyes were different, not healed, but different. You have to tell him, Mum. The quiet, certain voice of a woman saying the only true thing in the room. He has the right to know. Vivian opened her mouth. Her phone rang. A woman, clipped, professional. Miss Zulu, Special Agent Reeves, FBI. We need you to come in this morning regarding Lim Tae-won. Do not contact him before we speak. Lying dead. Bianca watched her mother's face. What was that? Get your coat. Vivian's already moving. Something has happened. Tae-won's world had detonated overnight. Federal investigators arrived at his corporation at 7 that morning with warrants covering every floor of every building his name was attached to. Documents, records, server data. 6 years of everything exposed in a single morning. Someone on the inside had fed Kang-soo everything. Tae-won walked into his emergency board meeting and stopped at the doorway. Kang-soo was sitting at the head of his own table. Not dead, not vanished. Sitting in Tae-won's chair with the specific satisfaction of a man who's been planning one moment for 3 years and has finally arrived at it. Not one board member met Tae-won's eyes. Kang-soo slid a photograph across the table. Vivian and Tae-won on the balcony. Walk away. Pleasant, final. Walk away from her, from the company, from Houston, or she disappears instead. Tae-won looked at the photograph, at Vivian's face in it, at everything that moment had cost them to arrive at. He looked back at Kang-soo. You have made one mistake. Completely calm. You told me exactly what you want. He pocketed the photograph. Now I know exactly what to protect. He walked out of his own boardroom. Nobody stopped him. The FBI arrived at Zulu Technologies at 10:15. Vivian watched them move through the floors she had built from nothing with the efficiency of people who had a list and were working through it. Her systems locked within the hour. Her reputation bleeding in real time. She stood in the middle of her company and did not flinch. She called Tae-won. He answered on the first ring. No. Her voice was steel. You listen to me. I have federal investigators in my building. My daughter shot a bullet into my bedroom wall last night, and I'm still standing here. So you're going to tell me the truth. All of it. Right now. Silence. Then he told her everything. The empire, how it was built, what it cost, the things he had done in the years before. She became a reason to be someone different. His voice did not waver, did not soften a single edge. When he finished, the line was silent. Vivian held the phone and breathed. Then she said 2 words. I trust you. The silence that followed was different from every silence before it. A decision made not from innocence, but from full knowledge. She knew what he was. She trusted him anyway. 48 hours. His voice stripped of everything except truth. Give me 48 hours. He burned it all down. Every connection, every arrangement, every silence that had kept his world running underneath the surface. He dismantled it piece by piece and handed every thread of Kang-soo's operation to the federal investigators in a package so complete, the agent who received it had never seen anything like it in 20 years. But at 3 in the morning his phone rang. Kang-soo. You are making a mistake. Pleasant, unhurried. Walk away from her before morning and I pull everything back. Stay and I make sure she goes down with you. Tae-won looked at the 3 words on the kitchen counter. You're safe, He put the phone down without a word and kept going until it was done. Kang-soo went after Bianca. She was followed from her apartment. 2 men, a black car 1 block behind her for 6 blocks before she noticed. She noticed because her mother had told her to notice things, because Tae-won had told her mother to tell her. She walked into the nearest hotel lobby and called her mother and stayed on the line. Tae-won was there in 11 minutes. He put himself between Bianca and the 2 men, and the conversation that followed left no room for negotiation. The 2 men left. Bianca looked at the man who had just stood between her and something she did not fully understand, and felt something shift in her chest she had not given permission to shift. He turned around. "Are you hurt?" "No." She looked at him differently than she ever had before. "Are you?" He almost smiled. "No." She nodded once. The nod of a woman setting something down. Kang-soo was arrested that evening. 3 years of planning collapsed in 48 hours by the man he had underestimated. The war was over, but Tae-won had lost everything. The corporation gone, the power gone, the empire gone. He stood in his empty office on a Wednesday afternoon and felt the specific quiet of a man who has burned his own house down and is deciding what he believes about himself. The door opened. He turned around. Vivian Zulu was standing in the doorway looking at him the way she'd looked at him on the balcony the first night. "You should not be here." Rough at the edges. "I have nothing left, Vivian." "I know." She crossed the room. Stopped in front of him. Close enough. "My husband's heart has been beaten inside your chest for 10 years, Tae-won." He went absolutely still. "What?" He was an organ donor, steady and full simultaneously. "Someone received his heart that night. I knew. I chose not to find out who." Her eyes did not leave his. "I think I was afraid of what it would mean." His hand moved to his chest. Slowly, unconsciously, the way it had moved on the balcony that first night. Now she understood why. She pressed her hand flat against his chest, over his heart, her husband's heart, his heart, both at once. Beneath her palm she felt it, the heartbeat, steady, strong, entirely alive. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds. He was the kindest man I ever knew. Barely a whisper. Patient and certain about the things that mattered. He would have liked you. Something that was almost a laugh. He would have seen straight through you and liked you anyway. Tae-won could not speak. For the first time in 35 years, Lim Tae-won could not find a single word. "I do not think it was an accident." She looked up at him, eyes full but holding. "The hospital, the gala, the balcony, the universe is not careless enough for all of this to be coincidence." He covered her hand with his, both of them standing in the silence of his empty office with the heartbeat beneath their joined hands, connecting them to something neither of them had language for. Bianca was in the doorway. She had not knocked. Had simply arrived the way you arrive at things you know you need to witness. She saw her mother's hand on his chest, his hand covering hers, their faces. Something moved through her slowly. Pain first, then something older. A woman setting down a very heavy thing and feeling the relief of no longer carrying it. Her eyes moved to his chest, to her mother's hand, to the place where something was beating that had belonged to her father. Her breath came out slowly. She turned and walked away quietly, giving them the room, the way her father would have. Tae-won looked at Vivian's hand on his chest, then at her face. At 60, you walked into my world and made me want to be the kind of man who deserves to be walked into. She looked up at him. And at 35, you walked into mine and reminded me that my story was not over. The silence that settled between them was the most sacred either of them had ever stood inside. Down the corridor, Bianca stood with her back against the wall and let herself cry. But these tears were different, not from broken, from something that had been broken slowly beginning to heal. That love was not a betrayal of grief, that her father's heart beating in a stranger's chest was not a loss but an extension. She wiped her face and smiled, the first real smile in longer than she could remember. She looked once more toward the office and understood something her grief had not been ready to understand until now, that love given freely never truly leaves. It just finds new places to live. Before we go, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us which moment hit you the hardest. If this story moved, you share it with someone who needs it today. And if you are not yet part of our family, here hit that subscribe button so you never miss what we create next. We make these stories for you, every single one.